Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Time is 7:03. Dustin, can you please take attendance?
Sure. Joe Abdella. Here. Greg Kava. Vicky Salon. Stephanie Kolnick. Here. Angela Macirulo. Alex McNaughton. Justin Ongley. Here. Jen Pody. Here. Jane Sargent. Pete Tagley. Mary Weber. Chris Wadig.
Thank you. Okay, public comment time on agenda items only. Anybody would like to speak? We can move on. Thank you. The consent agenda. Am I on that? Yes, for the minutes for the September 23rd meeting and also the board retreat for September 21st. Was there anything that we want to take off? No, we're good. Get it, Greg? All in favor? Really good. Anyway, okay. Great. Thank you very much. Dr. Rajiv, you're up on the October 1st enrollment data.
Okay, thank you. So as you know, come October 1st each year, districts report their enrollment numbers, and these are numbers that are important to us because we use that to make decisions, especially around budgets. It is interesting each year when you see the fluctuation that can occur across the district, whether that's at the elementary level or high school or now even agri-science. And the number of our own resident students versus tuition in. And we certify that enrollment, as you know, to the state. So our October 1 enrollment this year, as you see in your materials that were sent, is 799 students. And that's 2 students comparatively to last year of 797. So 2 more students this year than last. And that's overall. You can see the breakdown on the left side of the materials you were sent. So if you look on the chart, there's a total of 68 students at Burnham, 87 students at Booth, 157 students at Washington Primary, and that's a total of 400, and there's a total of 487 at Chippewa Valley. And when you break that down, it's 134 students in 6 through 8 and 353 students 9 through 12. So the chart you received in your materials reflects, of course, both resident students and non-residents. And those non-residents, just to clarify again, include students from Sherman, all of our tuition in. Those are parents that are paying to send their students here, and agri-science from all of our sending towns, as you know. But I want to let's take first a look at our resident students. That's on the right side of the chart. We have 568 students who reside in the towns of Bridgewater, Washington, or Roxbury. At each of the schools, you see, changes in enrollment, which is typical every year. And this typically occurs based on any number of factors, meaning some students, you might have more in one elementary one year, and then the next year it's completely different. We always review last year numbers, or at least we look at them so we can make comparisons, pay attention to any special trends we might be seeing across the board. Some of this we might not know by October 1st, but it gives us at least information that does definitely tell a story in the future for us. So overall, within the total enrollment, Burnham is up 2 students from last year. Booth is down 4 students comparatively again. Washington Primary School is up 18 students, and Chippewa Valley School is down 18 students, so they've decreased. compared to the previous year. For example, if you look at Sherman, we had a decrease there. I think it was 6 students less overall. And I know that some of this, there's reasons for all of this. So, not just making assumptions, but looking and, at some of the factors. Some students may have chosen to, or families chosen to go to private schools, just like students who don't go to, the high school and make a different decision. There also was I think we talked about it at one point in one of the F&O meetings about New Fairfield being built and some students going there, choosing to go there. So there are a lot of reasons why you might see that fluctuation. So our non-resident students, again, tuition in agri-science and Sherman, total 231 students out of our entire enrollment. And something I do want to point out, and I know this has come up before, but the percentage of our resident students, those who live in one of the 3 towns, that's 71% of our enrollment. And the percentage of non-resident students is tuition in is 29%. So you will see that more of a 50-50 at Chippewa Valley School, but that makes sense because you also have the agri-science as well, and that's part of that. So now if I want to focus a little bit on agri-science, if we can for a moment, we have 169 total students. I know I just want to point out that when we were at budget season and we were talking about increasing staff there, and I think Nicole and I both were voiced, let's just hang on because we don't believe we're going to get to that 170, 180. We didn't. We have 169 total students there. 122 come from Sunning towns and 47 are from our local towns. If you look overall, the breakdown would be the following for Chippewa Valley School. 50% are local students from our 3 towns. I said it was 50-50. 34.5% are agri-science students from our sending towns, and 15% tuition in, and that's the Sherman and regular tuition in by parents, if that makes sense. So Bridgewater has a total of 140 students. Roxbury 172, Washington 256. Oh, yeah, I can. Yes, because so if you look at, there's a footnote that I just want to point out. So for the agri-science local, which you'll see 47, right? You have 47 in-district ag students. Bridgewater has 16, Roxbury 14, and Washington 17. And that's in the footnote. Any questions? I tried to go through it and break it down as much as I could. Justin?
I'm just curious. A couple of years ago, we had the Prouda report for enrollment. I mean, are these numbers like kind of in line with what that report projected, or is that something we could? I'm honestly just curious.
So we probably are at the point coming up of, it's usually 2 to 3 years you bring them in again to look at it, but to be honest, we get our October 1 enrollment, and then right after we report it to you, then we start to look at that to see sometimes the trend. I've just, in my experience, some of the trends are right on and some are way off, but the majority at least gives you sort of a pathway to where you're going trend wise. Nicole, I don't know if you wanted to add to that. I wasn't here when you did the last one, but
we did have Mr. Prouda do a report last year, but I don't think it was ever shared at the board level. And I'm pulling it up to see what he predicted.
As I remember, there were some thoughts about stopping doing it
So he predicted he predicted a total of 804 students for this year.
He's very close.
I was at the Parents, Friends, and FFA alumni ag site, ag meeting that we went to the other day. And the question came up about how many students we are going to let into our freshman class next year. When would we decide that?
Well, usually, I mean, the October enrollment is separate from that, and then we start to talk about, what is the kind of threshold. But remember, we started this conversation last year. We didn't really land anywhere. It was more around, we need another teacher, right? And that's where that started to come up as to what is the number. I wasn't here when, this all started, so I don't know if there's a magic number. But I do know that when the business plan for the agri-science, that's what they called it, right? There was a, hey, we're not going to bring in new teachers or more students than we're capable of handling, and especially if it means more money. So we may want a discussion at the board level. In fact, Nicole and I were just talking about that the other day. It might be time to look at that.
But also, I don't think at that time they talked about Tyler teaches classes, so that helps a lot with the amount of teaching we have to have.
It does. As you can see, we didn't really get as high as they had originally thought when we were in budget season, and having Tyler go back to teaching the 2 classes helps dramatically. So for now, it looks like we're okay. Again, I don't want to say anything unless I've talked to each one of the building principals and Tyler as we go into the budget season, because it's not just all about numbers either. It's about pathways and, the spaces there and all of that. And I think we mentioned that last year when we were talking, but, it's a conversation we have to have, but certainly something we should talk about as a board. What is the threshold? Is there one?
That was what I was wondering.
Yes.
If we had any inkling about that.
Yes.
But that's one of the things that came up and people wanted to know.
I remember.
Like, there is no answer to that right now.
Right.
But when I find out.
Well, and again, it's all a balancing act
Right.
too. Like, we just can't say, oh, we'd love to have 300 new kids, but
Right.
Then you have to look at the flip side of that and the cost to, along with that. So I don't know. You sure?
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. Moving on to the board reports. So tonight we will make a motion to appoint the Board of Ed as the superintendent search committee. Once that has been approved, we will begin the process of interviewing consulting firms to assist the board. I reached out this past week to a few of the firms that I had shared with all of you at the retreat, one being NASDAQ, the other being CABE, and then CES, simply just to see what their availability would be for this month so that we can kind of get our ducks in a row moving forward once we are officially committee. I do want to just let the board know that when I spoke with Dave Irwin from CES, who was the consulting firm that helped us to help with our last super search, he did share with me that, because originally the discussion was that my understanding collectively is that if it's under 2 years, that our super that we hired was not staying within the district, that we would have some sort of, I don't want to say warranty, so to speak, but a free opportunity to use this search again for our next search. And since we were well under the 2 years, I think it was just short of a year, I reached out to Mr. Irwin just to simply, engage with him as a courtesy to invite him to be one of the firms. And he's such a really kind and lovely man that we enjoyed working with. But he did say that unfortunately, is it Dumas? Am I saying Dumas? Chip Dumas? Dumais, excuse me, who is the head of the company, has decided to make a change. He felt that because we as a board originally were hired them as a to do the storyboarding, and then we decided to move to a more traditional role, that in fact kind of changed the contract. And so he was not so inclined to honor the free, so to speak, session. I expressed my extreme disappointment in the decision, and I thought that that was a shame, especially considering that we paid for the more expensive package as the storyboarding, and then moved to the less expensive package pretty early on, I might add. And I was disappointed. And certainly, I shared that with Mr. Irwin. He expressed, he understood, he was very understanding. He did reach back out to Mr. Dumais. And he had said that he would consider maybe giving us a discount. And I said that I would discuss it with the board and we would get back to them. So I just wanted to let you know, we'll certainly discuss that later when we do our conversation. But I just want everyone to know and just want to be honest and upfront. So there's that. And that's my report for the evening. So thank you very much. During reports, do we get to ask questions? Answer questions?
I just want to know, is there any time period during that David said that we have to let them know whether we would like to even explore that
No.
discount with them?
He did not. He said he felt that there. No, he did not. He said that after we had moved on with Lori as the interim, they weren't really certain how long we were going to be in that position with Dr. Rodriguez. So he said that they felt that they were in a holding pattern, but I think that was a little bit of the conversation, but mostly it was the change in our moving from storytelling to the more traditional. So as I said, it's disappointing, but collectively we will make a decision on how we want to move forward, if we want to invite them to be one of our firms to interview or not. That's a decision we can make. So we'll move forward and discuss that a little bit further later on. So thank you. Sorry. Superintendent Lori.
Okay. Good evening again. I just have two quick things. One is some exciting news for Matt Parachi. The Connecticut Association of Athletic Directors appointed Matt Parachi to their Board of Control for 2024-25, where he will serve as the season's limitations consultant. I just received this late last month. Matt has been selected, just so you know, from a pool of over 200 athletic directors across the state. And that's for his knowledge, for his professionalism, and his ability to share valuable insights on many of the topics. So they think obviously very highly of our athletic director. And he was selected for his positivity, the changes he makes as an athletic director. And so his voice will be heard as he represents our district, as well as other districts throughout the region. And the board itself has the ability to weigh in and provide some sound vetting for all the CIAC rules and expectations and regulation changes. So it's a pretty important role for the year. And just want to say congratulations to Matt Parachi. And he's usually pretty humble about that. Oh, forgot one. Oh my goodness. Almost forgot. Very important. The Chapag, I'm doing a plug now for Chapag AgriScience, the third annual Horse Expo. And that is being held on Saturday, October the 12th from 9 to 3. And that's, of course, in the Equine Barn right here. And the talks and demonstrations, just so you know, will include things like jumping and reining and cryotherapy, nutrition, horsemanship, showmanship and judging, equine massage therapy. And it is all of the talks and all of the demonstrations come from very reputable individuals in the field. Little Britches will be there. Farrier Bill Lemoyne, that's from Fairfield Equine. Amanda Pelosi, Emily Emond, Dr. Dustin Corin. These are all people that are well known in their fields. Brooke Dugan, Sarah Reed, Dr. Sarah Reed, and Peter Leone, all persons. If you own horses and you're in the equine field, they're very reputable. So, thanks to Ryan Blatchley and all the team over there. I think they talked about it, right, Mary, at our last meeting. And so I'm so disappointed I will not be here, but I would certainly have loved to have gone, having had horses in my life. So, but I just wanted to make that plug because I promised Ryan if I came when I came here tonight.
There is a small entrance fee, but it includes lunch, so that's pretty cool.
It does. Registration is $5 and it includes lunch.
So nice.
Yeah. So I know.
Thank
Something
you.
positive, two positive things tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Treasurer's report, Alex.
Okay, this is going to be a little disjointed because we just had an F&O meeting, and I will save some for the F&O report. Finances, nothing is standing out as being much different than last month. The one thing that has happened, if you remember, we had about a $16,000 profit for the year. And there was still about $250,000 worth of encumbrances that needed to be cleaned up. In the course of cleaning them up, they were only going to add to our surplus, not subtract from it. Nicole has now got the encumbrances down to about 75,000 that we're still dealing with, and the 16,000 that we were under budget has now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Nicole, is about 80,000. So we're heading the right direction on that. I'm going to save there. Well, I'm going to ask for two things to be added to the agenda, and that'll be under new business, 2 votes that the F&O committee took and would like the board to approve. And I think that is it. Have I forgotten anything big? Okay, that's it for me.
Great. Thank you so much. Moving on to committee reports, Agri-Science, Mary.
We will be meeting for the first time on October 21st, and Jane and I and Lori have went to their meeting, their oversight committee meeting that they do for the state, and it was very good. It was very well attended, and it was very good. They hope to get more representation from the other town, some of the other towns. Also, Tim Armbruster, who is the chair of that committee, has sent me the minutes, but they're not final minutes, but he sent them to me so we can look at those as this committee meets.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Curriculum and education. Mr. Mr. Umbrey.
Nothing new to report. Our next meeting is the 28th of October.
Thank you, Justin. At Advance, Joe?
Nothing new to report. I was not unable to attend the meeting last week.
Thank you. Finance and Operations, back to Alex.
Okay, we just had an F&O meeting and a couple of things that came up. One is we're talking about security and we're talking about cameras that might go up in the elementary schools. And that, as of right now, that's in next year's budget. But we've talked to Don about maybe accelerating that and getting them in sooner rather than later. One of the things that I'm just going to come up is, and I'll do this under new business, is the doors to the 3 elementary schools. They have worked out a way to have separate rooms off of the entryway where there'll be 2 sets of doors, and the officer can stay behind this bulletproof glass and interact with people, buzz them in, not buzz them in. And, but we're going to have to talk about money and how much it's going to cost to get these done. We talked about the electrical panel in Roxbury. It is turning out to be something more than we thought it was going to be in size and scope. We're still reviewing it. And the last thing that we'll talk about is tuition in, and I'll bring that up under new business also. Don't think there's anything else. I talked about the encumbrances coming down from 298,000 to about 75. And that is it for me.
All right, thank you, Alex. Labor negotiations, Greg. Okay, thank you. Policy, Justin?
Nothing new. Our next meeting is October 21st.
Thank you. And strategic long range planning, we haven't met, so nothing to report. Okay, moving on to old business. Consider for approval a second reading of policy 4218.113. Prohibit, where am I? All right. Thank you. Including sex-based harassment. I'm sorry, I don't know why I couldn't read that. Do we have a motion? Greg?
Yes, I move that we accept proposed policy 4218.113, prohibition of sex discrimination, including sex-based harassment, parentheses, personnel, parents closed, that we accept that for second reading.
Thank you. Second? Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Abstain? Moving on. Great. New business. Alex? Yeah, I think we should.
Board of Ed took 2 votes today.
Oh, microphone.
Took 2 votes today and approved both by a vote of 5, or actually 500 and 600. The first one actually they're both 600. I apologize for that. Was to approve Don to spend money of $90,875 for the entryways to the 3 elementary schools. He's done a lot of research, including the locks that need changed out and priced it out. Nicole wanted to hold his feet to the fire here, so she didn't give any leeway. This is the exact number, and I would appreciate it if we could have a motion to approve that at the board level. All 3 primary schools.
Did you just make a motion? You're asking for,
I was looking for motion, but I could make the motion.
no.
Oh. $90,875 for the 3 vestibules.
So we have to make the motion first to the agenda. Thank you.
I make a motion to add this to the agenda.
All in favor?
I,
Anyone opposed? Okay,
okay,
That's good.
now,
now we can.
Joe, you want to make a motion?
Second? Mary?
All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining. The second issue, which I'd like to add to the agenda, is the discussion about tuition in. F&O committee made a motion to recommend it, make a recommendation to the board. But I need that added to the agenda first.
Alex, can I just ask a question first? I
Yeah.
know that we collectively made made the motion at the meeting, but I'm wondering if it would be better to table this motion, at least putting it on the agenda for next time, so that if anybody does have a concern or want to have a discussion about it from the public side, that they have the opportunity to do so.
I called Carolyn Dwyer immediately after.
I know, but I think there's more than one person that
Okay.
we want to consider. So I think
Okay.
it's important that we
I will
allow
withdraw
that
my motion.
opportunity. Okay,
Sure.
thank you. Okay. Okay, so, all right.
Well, actually, should I just tell the board what we did and not
Yeah,
ask for
that's
the
fine.
proof? Yeah, there's no reason for anybody else to not know.
No, I just want to make sure we have the opportunity.
We're not going to be voting on this, but we voted, the board, the F&O committee voted 6-0 to increase elementary, middle, and high school tuition ins by 3% per year for the foreseeable future. So that would not go into effect, obviously, this year, would be next year, 3% added each of those. The younger kids, we're still looking at what we want to do about them, but this would be for the elementary, middle, and high school. So anyway, that's just for your information, 3%
Alex, just to clarify, when you said younger kids, you mean reach.
reach.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can move on to the presentation of the class of 2024. Sophia? Thank you for joining us this evening.
Evening. Tonight I'll present to you the class of 2024 report. I'm going to cover their post-secondary plans, chosen college majors, college acceptances and enrollment, academic accomplishments, students who have taken AP dual enrollment and honors coursework, community service, and scholarships. So in the first section, you can see I have broken down out of a total of 77 students. Out of a total of 77 students, 70 students were accepted to post-secondary programs. This total includes students accepted to 2-year and 4-year programs. 61 students were accepted to 4-year programs. 56 students are attending a 4-year institution. And 6 students are planning to attend a 2-year institution or technical institution. 5 students plan to start at a 2-year college and transfer to a 4-year program thereafter to earn their bachelor's degree. We have 6 members of the class of 2024 who decided to enter the workforce upon graduation. 1 student decided to take a gap year before committing to a post-secondary program. And 3 of our students entered transition programs. These students have met their academic requirements to graduate, but need to continue to develop their vocational independent living skills. Each transition plan is individually created to the strengths, interests, and vocational preferences of each young adult in the program. The next section includes intended majors and career areas of the class of 2024. I've listed the majors that our students entering post-secondary programs are planning to pursue, and majors that were selected by 2 or more students are noted with an asterisk. These majors represent a variety of concentration areas and reinforce the importance of our continued efforts to expand the programming we offer in order to support student interests. Further, we are continuing to work on expanding dual enrollment opportunities that will allow more students to earn college credit while in high school. In the next section, I've listed all of the colleges and institutions that the class of 2024 were accepted to. Below that, you can see a list of the schools where they actually enrolled. I've also noted the level of selectivity according to acceptance rates for each school. And I just want to note that the school counseling department continues to invite college admissions reps throughout the fall to really expand the variety of schools our students are exposed to and consider. And we hope to increase the variety of those schools that they actually apply to from year to year.
Wait, Sophia, sorry, I just want to interrupt. Did you make physical copies of these? We don't have access to it on our computer.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you guys had that in your packet. Okay. Should I take a break and go get you copies? Would that be easier to follow along?
Yeah, because it's hard to
Yeah,
follow
okay.
right now.
I apologize. I'll go take care of that and I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Let's take a recess and we'll come back. Thank you.
Can I just start at the top?
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so starting with the post-secondary plans, we had a total of 77 students in the class of 2024. 70 of those students were accepted to post-secondary programs. This total includes students accepted to 2-year and 4-year programs. 61 students were accepted to 4-year programs. And 56 of those students actually enrolled and are attending those programs. 6 students planned to attend a 2-year institution or technical institution. These institutions include the Connecticut State Community College System and the Universal Technical Institute. We also had 5 students who were planning to start at a 2-year program, but transfer their credits to a 4-year program to complete their bachelor's degree. 6 members of the class of 2024 decided to enter the workforce upon graduation, and 1 student has taken a gap year before committing to a post-secondary program. Lastly, 3 of our students in the class of 2024 entered transition programs. These students have met their academic requirements to graduate but need to continue to develop their vocational independent living skills. Each transition plan is individually created to the strengths, interests, and vocational preferences of each young adult in the program. In the next section, I've listed the majors and career interest areas of the class of 2024. Majors that were selected by 2 or more students are noted with an asterisk. These majors represent a variety of concentration areas and reinforce the importance of our continued efforts to expand the programming we offer in order to support student interests. Further, we are continuing to work on expanding dual enrollment opportunities that will allow more students to earn college credit while in high school. The next section lists colleges and universities where our students were accepted. Below that, I've noted where our students actually enrolled. Under the enrollment list, I've also indicated the selectivity of each school where a student was admitted and enrolled according to the acceptance rates for that school. This fall, the counseling and College and Career Center continue to welcome more and more college reps from across the country and virtually from outside of the country to connect with our students to really expand their options and the programs that they consider. In the academic section, I'm going to highlight some of the programming and honors our students have received. We had 20 students in the class of 2024 who were inducted into the National Honor Society. 11 students received AP Scholar distinctions. Actually, I'm sorry, 13 students were recognized for AP Scholar distinctions. For students who took accelerated coursework, we had 61% of the class of 2024 take at least one AP course. Over a third of the class enrolled in 2 AP courses. And 74% of the class of 2024 took at least one AP or dual enrollment college course. 64% of the class took at least one honors course, and 31% took 3 or more honors courses during their high school career. For community service, our school requirement is 30 hours minimum. The class of 2024 contributed 4,218 hours of service. Over 70% of the class exceeded the minimum required number of service hours. And this class year's Community Service Award recipient accrued over 250 hours. For scholarships, this class earned over $190,000 in scholarship money from local organizations. This was 40% of our graduates earning money for post-secondary programs through local scholarships. This section reflects the individual scholarship recipients and the scholarship organizations. This information, along with all the data reflected in this report, will also be published in the class of 2024 graduate report. This concludes my presentation on the class of 2024 report. Are there any questions before I review the school profile?
Get this, yeah, there. Just out of curiosity, what does a kid do in a gap year?
So there's a number of programs they can pursue. Some are more organized pursuits to prepare them for actually enrolling in a college program. Some are just taking a break, but planning on attending, working in the meantime, or planning on attending a post-secondary program thereafter.
Is this something like a PG year, a postgraduate
It can
year?
be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the report?
I'm glad to see that the students have been accepted at colleges across the country, which I think is a very good thing. But almost all of them are going to school east of the Appalachians. So the question becomes, is there a reason why people are not straying, except for 1 or 2, are not straying further afield?
I think the biggest trend that I've noticed in talking to students is the financial piece. So not only what they have to pay in tuition, but travel expenses to get back home is a big concern. That's also why we see a lot more of our students, even though they're getting into many out-of-state schools and schools that are a greater distance from home, they're starting at community college because of that financial concern.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm now going to move on to describing the school profile. Oh, sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, just quickly, I'm curious how the class of 2024 compares to prior years. If you could report on that in terms of how selective the schools are that they end up attending.
So I do have averages as far as how many students enrolled in post-secondary programs and how many students were accepted to four-year programs historically. The last 2 years, so class of 2023 and class of 2022 had an 83% enrollment in post-secondary programs compared to the 91% from the class of 2024 that has gone up. The four-year enrollment in last year's class was 64%, which has gone up to our 78%. So that's improved. I don't have specific figures on your other question, but that's something that I can provide at a later date. Does everyone have a copy of the school profile? Oh, sorry.
Just out of curiosity, can I ask what index we use to to see which schools are at which level of selectivity?
These numbers are from College Board.
From College what?
College Board.
College Board. I'm just one jumps out at me, like UConn being under like less selective. It surprises me. So I'd be interested to see like they on College Board they would.
It's a 55% acceptance rate. So based on that range, because they're accepting more than half of applicants, they fall into that certain selectivity range.
And they don't break out like which applicants they're getting, because I assume that like some, the threshold level of like the applications that you would get would have to be a base of this, or not just like a percentage of what they accept. I don't know if it's.
So certainly there are programs that have a much higher selectivity rate.
Like within.
This is just like in general.
Got it.
But they do have a breakdown of certain programs that are more competitive.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? Does everyone have a copy of the school profile at this point? Okay. So the school profile is updated annually. It serves as a way to convey a picture of our school community, student accomplishments, and the academic experiences here at Chappaq. It gives context to where students come from when they are applying to post-secondary institutions. So we send this document out to with every application for our students, so that they can see, what kinds of opportunities our students have here, and they can, assess their application based on that information. At the top of the document on the first page, you will see a description of the Chappaq school community and student body. Each year, we update the details of our enrollment, which includes a breakdown of our high school population and our Agri-Science Academy students. Below that section, you'll see a community description. Below the community description, you'll see the Chappaq Valley core values are noted. And we also detail the facilities on campus and information specific to the Agri-Science Academy. At the bottom center of the page, there's information on academic commitment recognitions. Students have the ability to earn points in each course, demonstrating their commitment to learning, and these points are noted on their official transcripts. On the bottom right of this document, our grade scale and GPA weighting process is noted. By course type, you can see the weighting of each type of course. Flipping to the back side of the profile, there is more information on academic expectations at Chappaq, as well as descriptions of our community service and senior project requirements. We have also added a description of the supervised agricultural experiences required for all students in the Agri-Science Academy program. Below that section in the center of the page, there is a box with a breakdown of the percentage of our students continuing their education. Out of 77 students in the class of 2024, 91% were accepted into post-secondary programs. This includes vocational training, certification programs, 2-year colleges, and 4-year colleges. This is the highest percentage in the past 5 years of students continuing their education. 78% of these students were accepted to 4-year programs. We also have noted in this section the total number of community service hours performed by the class of 2024, which will also be highlighted in the class of 2024 report. Below that, you can see the average SAT scores from the Connecticut SAT School Day of the class of 2024 that took place in spring of 2023. Along the right side of the page, you will see an updated list of our accelerated coursework, all of our advanced placement courses, dual enrollment college courses, and honors courses for core academic areas are listed. There's also links provided at the bottom right corner of this document to view course syllabi, as well as the comprehensive program of studies outlining all the coursework offered at Chippewa, along with course descriptions. Below the accelerated coursework information, we have included information on the Seal of Biliteracy. Students earn the Seal of Biliteracy on their diploma by taking advanced language studies and sitting for a proficiency exam. 12 students in the class of 2024 demonstrated their proficiency in 2 or more foreign languages, earning this biliteracy seal. This is up from 4 students last year. The last section of the profile at the bottom of page 2 highlights some of the activities and accomplishments that occurred last school year here at Chippewa, including the Harvard Model UN Conference, HALO nominations and awards for drama productions, and lastly, numerous visual arts events and awards that occurred throughout last school year. Does anybody have any questions about the profile?
I just wanted to tell you something that came to me. I was at a music event and there was a lady that happens to live in Washington now, but she told me that her daughter actually she used to live in Woodbury, but she actually wanted to come to Chippewa for her senior year because we have senior projects. And her senior project was outstanding. I happened to have gone to her presentation and it was outstanding. But she came here because of senior projects. This is something else that nobody else has that we have. So I thought that was amazing.
That's great.
I wanted to tell you that. The other thing I thought you might want to add to the arts is that the people in the chorus here appear at Radio City Music Hall. I think that's
a great suggestion. Thank you.
That's it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay, we have the annual data presentation from Carrie Snowden.
Good evening, everybody. These slides were in the board packet folder, so you can see them also digitally, but they're going to be shown up here too. Thank you so much for inviting me to share the results of the state's required testing for our district from the 23-24 school year. Tonight, I plan to share our results, some comparisons with other districts, and our plans for improvement. Before we dive into the state required assessments, I thought it might be helpful to review the different types of assessments we use to monitor student learning and growth in Region 12. Starting off at the top of this list, on a daily basis, teachers are using classroom-based assessments, things like quizzes, exit tickets, formative assessments with their lessons every day. And then maybe not daily, but regularly, teachers are using curriculum-based assessments, things like summative assessments, unit or chapter tests, final projects. That's another sort of longer-term way we are measuring our students' learning and growth and progress. And then we have some district required assessments. These are going to be acronyms you've heard before. These are administered 2 or 3 times a year. The STAR test, for example, administered to students grades 1 through 8. The DIBELS test is a test of early reading skills in elementary school. The ERLA is a new reading assessment we're using this year. It goes along with our new literacy program, our core. Horizon testing is used in grades 9 and 10 as a predictor of performance on SAT, as well as PSAT is used the same way. And then finally, at the bottom of the list up here on the slide is what we're going to go into in more depth tonight, which are the state mandated assessments. These are administered once a year. These SAT, Scholastic Achievement Test, the Smarter Balance tests, and which stand for Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, and the NGSS tests, which are the Next Generation Science Standards Assessments. All of these assessments are required by the state of Connecticut to be administered to students each year. First, the SAT. This language arts and math test is administered to all juniors each year in the spring. In addition to SAT Day, which Sophia just referred to, when the test is administered during the school day, of course, students are able to take additional SAT tests on other dates as it's offered. The State Department of Education collects student performance data for the SAT tests that are taken at school on the SAT day. So that's sort of the data we're going to look at right now. Ben, can you go back just one? Yep. This slide shows our historical SAT language arts data. The numbers represent the percentage of students in each year who achieved the benchmark score of 480 or higher, and that is the state set benchmark score. These bars represent different groups of students. So the juniors who took the SAT during the school day in 21-22, and then the next junior class who took it 22-23, and then this year's seniors, last year's juniors took it in 23-24. Because of our small class size in 21-22, each student represents 1.5 percentage points. This is just important to remember. In 22-23, each student represents 1.25 percentage points. And in 23-24, each student represents 1.2 percentage points. I point this out to remind us that only a few students performing above or below the benchmark can make a big difference when you're looking at percentages. Okay, so in this slide, we're going to zoom right in on the current seniors. This slide represents the positive growth over time in language arts for our current seniors. In the spring of their sophomore year, their average score was 486 on the PSAT. In the fall of their junior year, their average score was 504 on the PSAT. And then in the spring of their junior year, their average score was 540 on the SAT. So it sort of shows over the course of 1 year from PSAT to PSAT to SAT, how they grew over time. It's important to note that this is a rough cohort comparison, meaning that there may be a few students who were in district for sophomore year, but then maybe moved during the junior year and vice versa. However, we really do not have a large transient population. So generally these scores represent pretty much the same student from one testing period to another. Unlike that bar graph where it's different kids each time. All right, this slide shows our historical SAT math data. Just note that the benchmark score in math is 530, which is different from the benchmark score of 480 in language arts. Again, these bars represent different groups of students, the juniors who took the SAT during the school day administration in 21-22, and then in 22-23 and 23-24, different groups of students here. In 21-22, each student represents 1.5 percentage points. In 22-23, each student represents 1.25 percentage points. And in 23-24, each student represents 1.2 percentage points. And again, looking at growth over time in math for our current seniors, they grew from an average score of 470 to 482 to 504 from sophomore to junior year. These average scores also represent a rough cohort. There could be 1 or 2 students who were, you know, there for the spring of sophomore year, but maybe not there in the spring of junior year. But generally, this is the same group of students over time. So in this slide, we see a comparison of Region 12's percentage of students who meet the state's benchmark scores to the entire state and then to districts nearby. This is SATs. This public information can be found at the website public-edsite.ct.gov. As you can see, Region 12 has some of the highest percentage rates of students meeting the benchmark for both language arts and math in our geographic area of the state. The blue bars represent language arts scores, while the red represents math. So in Region 12, right at the top, 74.7% of our students met the benchmark score of 480 in language arts, while 42.2% of our students scored the benchmark score of 530 in math. At this state level, you can see that right here, state averages were 54.8% of students across the state met the benchmark in language arts, and 29.5% of the students across the state met the math benchmark. And then you can just see some of the other districts that are in our area. One I'll call your attention to, Regional School District number 1. That's Housatonic High School, just to help people remember where some of these regional school districts are. They were at 55.6% of students met the benchmark in language arts, and 25.6 met in math. And then down here in Region 15, which is Southbury and Middlebury, that was one district where they had a slightly higher percentage of students meet the language arts benchmark. They had 75.9% of their juniors meet the language arts benchmark. And then also higher percentage in math, 57.3% of their students met the benchmark in math compared to our 42.2. So this just sort of gives you an overview of SAT performance in terms of percentages. Now these districts have widely varying populations, meaning size of population. Some of these districts are much larger than ours, some are not. But it just gives you a sense of where other people are. And then I have one more slide on SAT comparisons. This slide shows a comparison of the percentage of Region 12 students meeting the benchmark to the districts who send their students to our agri-science program. Of course, students from nearby towns, including these, also tuition in at all grade levels. So it's the agri-science sending towns, but it's also a lot of students who tuition and come from here too. You can see that Region 12 has a higher percentage of students meeting the language arts and math benchmark SAT scores than most of the other districts on this chart. Not all, there are some that are a little bit higher than us. Bethel, you can see they were at 68.42.7, very close to us in math. You can see that New Fairfield, very close to us in language arts, 71 compared to our 74%, and 40.9% in math compared to our 32.2. Sure.
Across the state, our seniors have to take the SATs, or the juniors have to take the SATs. But for many years, several years now, the colleges were not required for you to send your SAT scores. So does that mean that perhaps kids were not as motivated to do well on this test because they knew that they didn't have to send it to the college? And now, from what I understand, more are asking for your SAT scores. Is that correct?
That is correct. And all through this, there were some colleges that were always requiring there. And for many years, even pre-COVID, there were a lot of colleges that made it test optional, right? That you could send your SAT scores or not. So I do think that number of test optional schools increased post-COVID. And I could not speak to the motivation of some of these students, but I could see how that might influence some students' decisions about SATs. However, it is true. I'm hearing the same thing, and I think Sophia could speak to this as a person who's dealing with college admissions. I have also heard that a lot of colleges are sort of swinging back from test optional to test required. Am I right about that? Yeah. So I don't know that that's a theory about students' motivation. We shall see.
So maybe they'll have more motivation to do well.
Maybe.
And to maybe take classes for SAT prep.
Yep, maybe.
I was just going to say how thrilled I was that we did decide to go with the SAT, because when we were, working with CAPT and all of those other tests, there wasn't as much motivation as it is to here is something that they have to take as a state mandated exam, which also helps them with so many colleges and universities that do want you to take the SAT. And I mean, even when I went to school, a lot of us had to take the SAT to get into college. And I know for a while there was talk, and it was waning a little bit because they were deciding, and I'm sure Sophia will agree, lots of colleges and universities were deciding whether that was the right measure, whether it was equitable right across the United States and the world. But they started to swing back and realize it is a good measurement and it's the most equitable. Right. So
Just because it's been a while, it's been a while since I took the SATs, and I know it's changed a bit. How is it calculated now?
Say that one more time.
How is the SAT score calculated now? Because I think before there used to be a writing component. Now is it back to just?
So this is the way I see the scores. Sophia, can you expand on that a little bit? I feel like there are just two scores. They're both out of 800.
So a top score now is still 1,600, or that's what it would be now. Do we have that's the top score. So do we have an average, like a national average or like a district average?
I don't have a national average, but if we go back a couple of slides, you can see that our average score in math was a 504, and two slides back. Sorry, then the other way. Yep. And our average score in language arts was 540. So that's a 1,044 as an average score. And I just was listening to Sophia report that last year's class was right around 1,053. I think it said in that profile report. So that's our district's average score. Of course, that means there are going to be students who were scoring above that and students who are scoring below that. Right? Was it 1,053 for last year's seniors? 1,034. And now this year, 1,044 as an average score. All right, so let's move forward a few slides. Ben, thanks so much for navigating. One more. All right. So our leaders and faculty have examined this data to determine how we might improve our students' achievement on the SAT. These are some initial plans that will be revised and expanded as we administer other beginning of year assessments to identify specific needs for groups and individuals. It's important to note that while I have been showing you data that represents an entire grade level of students, our leaders and teachers are able to see specific data down to the student level. This allows us to see more details about strengths as well as areas of improvement for individual students to help us plan our support. So a couple of ideas in language arts. We're working on a scope and sequence of grammar skill expectations starting in 6th grade. That was an area that sort of came up as an area of need. And there's been some ongoing collaboration between teachers in the language arts department and our library media specialists to really promote more independent reading in an effort to get more students reading and up those scores. In math, we had most of our math department participate in a recent professional development based on a book study they have been doing for the past year called Building Thinking Classrooms. They are bringing those instructional strategies back to the rest of the math department and going to keep adding those strategies to their classroom practices. We're going to offer SAT preparation sessions like we did last year, specifically focusing on math. And we're offering math lab classes for students, identified students who are in 9th and 10th grade who need a little extra support. Early on in the year, the math lab is really targeted towards students in algebra, but we're leaving the door open for other students who might have needs beyond just algebra classes. Yeah.
So about these interventions, it seems like the planned interventions for ELA are starting earlier than the interventions here on the slide for math. And arguably, math is almost more important to have that solid foundation to be able to level up. So seeing that the math scores are significantly trailing ELA scores, and frankly, even thinking back to the ages ago that I took the SAT, typically scores in math were higher than average ELA scores. So it seems like there needs to be more intervention in math much earlier than 9th and 10th grade.
So I'm just reporting right now on SATs. In the next round of slides, I'm going to talk about the Smarter Balance scores, which are given to students in grades 3 through 8. And in there, I will talk about middle school and elementary support plans.
Okay, I just in the slide on ELA, it talked about sixth grade interventions, so it just doesn't seem apples to apples.
Right, because I think because they had a plan to do 612, and as a department, as a language arts department, they're working in that coordinated way. I've just, hold on a couple more slides, and you're going to see some more information about middle school.
All right.
We have some significant things going on in middle school math. Sure.
Thank you.
And then the last slide on SAT. These are plans that sort of are globally supportive of math and language arts. We have reading and writing centers for students during their study halls and Smart Easy Academies after school in the high school. We're going to use our Horizons data, that's that district assessment that predicts SAT performance, to predict high school student deficits and provide extra support in targeted areas. We're also going to provide professional learning and instructional strategies such as project-based learning, learning targets, and checking for understanding. And specifically at the high school, we're working on some job-embedded learning through a lab site protocol. This has actually been going on for a year in the high school already. And these are being led by instructional leaders and content coaches at the high school. And all of these things are intended to improve instruction, which will eventually improve our student performance and achievement too. All right, I'm going to move on to Smarter Balance. Okay. Okay. All right, so next we'll take a look at the Smarter Balance assessment, which is given to all students in grades 3 through 8 in both language arts and math. We will take a look at data in grade level bands. You'll see here 3, 5, and 6, 8. This is to ensure that we are protecting personally identifiable information in our small grade levels and classes across the district. So just a little note that this is more of a look at grade bands because of our very tiny classes. So this graph represents historical language arts data for all of our students in grades 3 through 5 in all schools, which means we're looking at different groups of students in each of these 3 school years. From year to year, each student represents about 0.8 percentage points, which means that once again, a few students can make a pretty big difference in the percent of students who are meeting the benchmark, just something to keep in mind. This graph represents the same historical language arts data for students in grades 6 through 8. Although this information represents different students for each year, the percentage points that each student represents remains fairly steady at approximately 0.6. Each student represents 0.6 percentage points here. On the next graph, we are seeing growth in language arts for our current 6th grade students during their time in elementary school. When they were in 3rd grade, 78.9% of students met or exceeded the Smarter Balance benchmark. In 4th grade, 82.1% of students met or exceeded the benchmark. And in 5th grade, 79.4% of students met or exceeded the benchmark. In this graph, which represents just one grade level, each student represents approximately 2.9 percentage points. So a few students can make a big difference here. This graph shows growth in language arts for our current 9th grade students. When they were in 5th grade, 81.4% of the students met the benchmark. In 6th grade, 73.7%. In 7th grade, 79.4%. And in 8th grade, 75.8% met the benchmark. These numbers represent one group of students, but keep in mind, there's going to be a little change in the population in terms of students who might move in and out of the district over these 4 years. In this grade level, each student represents 1.6 percentage points. All right, we're going to move on to Smarter Balance math performance. So first, let's take a look at the historical data for our 3rd through 5th graders over the last 3 years. These numbers represent the percent of all Region 12 students in these grades who met the benchmark on the Smarter Balance math assessment. As a reminder, these are 3 different groups of students, 3 through 5. Move on to 6 through 8. In grades 6 through 8, we see the percent of Region 12 students who met the math benchmark over the last 3 years. 60.6 in 21-22, 54.5% in 22-23, and 60.4% in 23-24, which I think goes back to the point about needing to start earlier. You know, we're seeing a need here in terms of improvement. And a little bit of growth data, and then we'll talk about plans for improvement. So similar to the language arts data that we reviewed earlier, here are the results for our current sixth grade students in math over time. We can see that there has been a decline in the percentage of students who have met the benchmark. When they were in third grade, 92.1% of students met the benchmark. In fourth grade, it was 76.9%, and in fifth grade, 70.6%. As a reminder, in this grade level, each student represents 2.9 percentage points, which means that a change from 76.9 to 70.6, this change is a difference of about 2 students meeting the benchmark or not meeting the benchmark. While a change from that 92.1 to 76.9 is a difference of about 5 students. Our school-based teams are reviewing this data at the student level to fully understand the changes in performance from one year to another. And then just a quick look at our current ninth graders. In fifth grade, 69.8% of that grade level met the benchmark. In sixth grade, it was 56.1. Seventh grade was 61.3. And in eighth grade, 56.5. Each student in this group represents about 1.6 percentage points. They're a bit of a larger grade level there. And then just some comparison data here. So in this slide, once again, we see a comparison of Region 12's percentage of students who meet the state's benchmark scores to the entire state and to districts that are nearby. Once again, the blue bars represent language arts, while the red represents math. So in Region 12, this is all students grades 3 through 8. So just keep that in mind. All students grade 3 through 8. 77.7% of our students met the benchmark in language arts, while 69.5% of our students scored at the benchmark in math. At the state level, you can see 48.9% met the language arts benchmark and 44.1% met the math benchmark across the state. And then here are a couple of other nearby school districts. You'll notice that I pulled out the Kent scores as opposed to Region 1. Region 1 is only Housatonic Valley High School, so they don't have smarter balance scores. Kent is one of the school districts within Region 1, so I pulled that one out, and they border our town. And then, you know, once again, looking back down to Region 15, who we saw for smart SAT, they were at 60.2% at benchmark for language arts and 63.6% at benchmark for math. You know, but there are others. And then one last slide on our sending districts and comparisons there. This slide shows a comparison of Region 12 scores to scores of the district who send students to our agri-science program, and also students from these towns tuition in at all levels. You can see that Region 12 has a higher percentage of students meeting the language arts and math benchmark than most of the other districts on this chart. Not all, some that are really, really close to it. So just a peek at that. I'll just go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know where I got this impression, but at some point I understood that at the high school level, the numbers dropped off radically. The elementary school up to middle school, they kept going up, but something happened when the kids moved to high school. Is this my imagination?
Well, in terms of academic data, there is no continuous assessment that would be apples to apples from elementary to middle school to high school. This represents third grade to eighth grade, so that's a lot of continuous years. But then in high school, we switch over to PSAT and SAT as our main state required benchmark assessments. So certainly we could be looking at math and language arts performance overall. It just wouldn't be necessarily an apples to apples comparison about the assessments.
Alex, I'm wondering if you're remembering, we've had the conversation of the difference in the dip from elementary to middle school. That's kind of what we've spoken about in years past. And if you see on slides, is it 21 and 17 that follows that ninth grade cohort? That's a conversation we've had over the years. And I'm wondering if I know this is your first year back at it, but you know, that trend just kind of has been consistent within our district. I don't know if that's a national average. I think if it's like a state average, if that kind of consistently happens in those age groups. And if you know, in years past, we've tried to come up with some interventions to try to boost that. Is that part of that discussion right now? And trying to figure out why that dip continues to happen?
So in terms of an analysis of the data from elementary to middle school, I certainly could take a look at that. All of this data is public, and you can get it by grade level in school. So that's something we could take a look at. Do we see the dip from middle school, from elementary to middle school? In the next few slides after this, and I know Lori wants to say something, we're going to talk about like the Region 12 plans for improvement. So that's sort of in terms of your second question about like, what can we do about this? We're going to talk about that in the next
And it's
few
just
slides.
interesting because it's like that, like on slide 21, just if I'm reading it correctly, this is the exact same cohort year to year to year, right? Like when we look at that, the current ninth grade one, that was that same class, fifth grade, sixth grade.
Yep.
And it's so interesting to me how they dip in both math and science. And the SBAC test, is it significantly different year to year? Is that like?
It's certainly different from year to year,
Sure.
significantly different. I mean, they're testing different standards from year to year.
Because like third, fourth, and fifth tends to be up. And that's a thing that we've struggled to understand.
I've had so many conversations like this with other boards as well and colleagues. So this is a typical trend, just so you realize that. And having been a middle school principal as well, it used to be frustrating because, you know, they do great in elementary. It is a different level of rigor. That's number one, not a justification, just reality. And so is the SAT when they get there, right? But the one thing I do want to say is and point out that is exactly why we know this trend exists. We've looked at our data. Everyone at the high school, you know, and Don and all of us have looked at that. That is why we made the schedule change so there would be additional time in math because middle school changed here. And I was here when we had a middle school, an actual middle school with a different schedule than the high school because in many districts, obviously, you're split. So it's much easier to do where a middle school schedule doesn't typically have block. So just keep that in mind because some do. I'm not saying all, you know, all don't. But one of the issues is the not the length of time in each class, but that you drop a class, right? Typically, you don't have it every day. That's just how it works because you have double the time in one period. That's one, again, not saying that's a total factor, but that's one issue that has come up when you try to look and get to the bottom of things. Secondly, we added time back in. If you know, we talked about this last year and adding that into the schedule, and we hired interventionists. That is, we won't know the impact. We assume just being, you know, having knowledge and expertise in the field that is one thing that can help students is the one-on-one time or smaller group at that level. That is critical. We didn't have that before. So that kind of fills in the time that we believe they might need to see if that bolsters the achievement. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And just because I have it, because I've got Power School on my phone, and I'm just pulling up my daughter's schedule, who's in sixth grade. That now, like, I think she does have math every day now, right? Because your intervention period is on the next day. So that's one of those that
That's
we are like, this is the first class that's going to be getting that.
This is the first class, and if you remember, we talked about it, and I put in the interventionist at the middle school for that reason.
So just so people know, it's not you're getting math one day and you'll get an intervention later. It's every other day. I mean, it's every day. Now,
Yes.
so you know you're getting that.
Yes, exactly.
And just to be clear, that's called skills reinforcement, that extra math period that every student is getting. I'm just clarifying that that's different from some students are also getting in addition to that math intervention. Students who've been identified as needing that. Just want to be clear on what it's called.
Yep.
Okay, so on the next slide, I'm so sorry.
I know we've been vexed by the inability to determine why we have this drop off, and it could be that everybody has this drop off. Is there something traumatic about a change from one school to another that causes it? Or is there any issue related to curriculum? I'm sure you would be keen to find that out. Do we not have curricula that complement each other from the elementary level so that they have to get used to a whole different approach? And maybe that causes a drop off. I don't know. I'm just asking.
We use Eureka Squared as our primary resource in math instruction from elementary all the way through middle school. So that should not be an issue. In many schools, there is a change from elementary to middle in terms of the program that's being used. That is not true in Region 12. However, that does, I absolutely think we need to think about our curriculum, and our assessments. Are the assessments we are using rigorous enough and aligned with some of these tests? Those are all things that I will definitely be helping the staff take a look at.
Right. So since testing measures whether or not you have taught, whether or not the kids have picked up on the lesson you're teaching, it's measuring in part what you're teaching, and are you teaching it correctly? I guess the question is, should we not be focused on what curriculum starting in beginning of elementary school is going to be most productive when the students get to high school? Because isn't that the goal, to get them at the highest levels of performance when they graduate from high school?
Yes, and I can tell you that Eureka Squared, which is the program that Region 12 chose long before I arrived, is an extremely well-respected program around the state. So I'm not going to say I've dug into the research around preparation for SAT or anything like that, but I can tell you it's a program that is highly recommended by the State Department of Ed, used by many districts, and has very high ratings on Ed Reports, which is that organization that oversees ratings of resources like this that teachers use to teach curriculum. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I know you'll get it. You'll find the solution.
We're gonna work together on it. That's for sure. So speaking of that, here are some plans for improvement. Like they have done with SAT, our leaders and our faculty have examined this data to determine how we might improve our students' achievement on the Smarter Balanced assessments. These are initial plans that will be revised and expanded again as we administer, which we are almost coming to the end of administering beginning of the year assessments to identify specific needs. Once again, it's important for me to just remind you that I've been showing you big level data, a whole grade level or a grade band, but our teachers and our leaders are looking at student level data. And so that helps us really zero in on which student didn't, maybe met the benchmark last year, but didn't this year. We're looking at that kind of thing, even though I'm not showing that publicly. So we've got a new literacy program called ArtCore, as you all know, and that it comes with a literacy assessment called the IRLA, and that is something we are hoping is going to help identify needs in our students in terms of early reading. That program also came with a set of toolkits, which supports small group instruction, K-5 in literacy. We have expanded the use of the DIBELS subtest. That's a state-approved and state-recommended set of literacy tests to identify student-specific areas for growth. We have purchased an asynchronous course for all our K-5 teachers that we will work on PD days throughout the year to teach everyone more about the basics of the science of reading. And we are implementing intervention programs, tutoring, and progress monitoring for our identified students K through 8. And then for math, on the next slide, we have a new program that our elementary math interventionists are using called SOAR. They're just at the beginning stages of that, but it's looking promising for supporting math intervention at the elementary level. We are integrating more problem-solving experiences to support application of skills. That is an area that teachers have identified as a need with Eureka Squared. We are looking at the state's model math curriculum and looking at aligning it with Eureka Squared, because a lot of good experts wrote that math curriculum, and we think we could borrow from that model curriculum and make sure ours is in line with and use some of the resources from that model curriculum. We are going to work on getting our Smarter Balanced vocabulary list to all of our teachers, including our special area teachers, because as much as we can embed Smarter Balanced vocabulary into all of the instruction that students are hearing, we think that will be helpful. We have increased math support at Burnham School and Booth Free School by a half-time interventionist who's dedicated solely on math. We provide daily math instruction. This is what Stephanie was talking about to middle school students with an added skills reinforcement period. And we provide math intervention for identified students in 6th through 8 by our certified math teachers. And that again was an addition that the board supported. And then finally, we for all of math and language arts, we've got a lot of other things going on. Professional development, looking at K through 8 data regularly through Linkit. We are examining growth trends for our high need students and making sure we are bringing our high need students along. And we are examining the alignment of our K-12 assessment results like STAR with the state required tests like Smarter Balance, and making sure we're seeing good alignment between those assessments and that it's giving us the information that we need to design instruction. Okay. Last one, NGSS. We move on to our final state required assessment, the Next Generation Science Standards. For this test, we're only going to be looking at achievement over time. This test is not given in consecutive years. Students take the NGSS test in grades 5, 8, and 11. All right, so first, this is the performance of our grade 5 students over the last 3 years, different groups of students each year. You'll see there's been a small increase in the percentage of students who are meeting the benchmark, but again, these are different groups of students, so this doesn't necessarily represent growth in students, it just represents performance for that grade level. On the next slide, we are looking at achievement for 8th grade. So these are the percentage of students in each of the last 3 8th grade classes who have met the state benchmark for performance on the NGSS test. And then finally, we see this is last year's 11th graders, so our current seniors. They have, gone up and down in terms of the percent of students who are performing at the benchmark level on this test too. And in science, I will say we are, again, using some of that same professional development that's going to help language arts and math is also going to help our science performance. We are also utilizing phenomenon-based and real-world problem solving as a contribution to our science instruction. And we are looking at Project Lead the Way as a program that we use in our elementary schools for science and engineering, and there have been some updated materials we just found out. So we're going to look at which ones of those updated materials we can get to support our science and STEM programming with elementary. That is the end. Any other questions?
That was a lot of. Sorry, I had one question about
Sure.
science. Did we?
Yeah.
Might be misremembering this, but did we change or add curriculum to the elementary school level with regards to science? I don't know if we really had a curriculum that was consistent across all 3 schools like several years ago.
So a couple of years ago, my understanding is there was a teacher who was really dedicated to STEM instruction.
Right.
That teacher wrote curriculum that year or couple of years that he was in that position that to this day remains our science curriculum. We use Mystery Science and Project Lead the Way as resources to teach that curriculum. I will say it's definitely time to take a look at that and decide if the curriculum is meeting our needs. The standards have not been updated, so the curriculum should still be solid. I think we need to take a look at the curriculum with our resources and make sure that all of that is still meeting our needs in a manageable way for elementary school teachers. But yes, there is consistent curriculum across. I have just finished grade level meetings with all of the elementary grades, and that's one of our topics of conversation at each grade level. What are the science units that are taught at this grade level? What are the social studies units so that there is consistency across the grades?
Yeah, that was a big shift from us after COVID when that teacher moved out of that role. And then I think each individual teacher then took on that responsibility because that used to be almost treated like a special.
Correct.
And we lost that.
That's been a shift for teachers. Yeah.
And then I just coincidentally in the art curriculum that we've purchased, I've noticed in my elementary school kids that there's a science component written into the ELA as well. I don't know if that changes how we write curriculum there or if that's.
Yes, that is something we talked about too. The ARC literacy program is very content rich in both science and social studies. And so at all of our grade levels, we have talked about making some adjustments in the timing of our science and social studies units because we want to take advantage of that. And if in any way possible, teach the coordinating science unit at the same time the students might be studying that science topic through ARC. So I think that's going to actually be really, really helpful, that the fact that ARC is so rich with science and social studies content.
Carrie, I want to thank you very much for this because, you've come here tonight with various test scores, and you're looking at it in a very big way as to how you can solve these problems. And coming here with that, showing us your thinking. Number one, doing it. And number two, showing us your thinking is so critical. I would love for you at some point in the future to come back after you've had a chance to see how these things work. Because usually in business and industry, when you put together a program for fixing something, if you're lucky, a third of the items work. And I would love to see your thinking of how that goes through, because just showing us this process is really, really important. And I cannot thank you enough for the hard work you and your staff did. This is hard stuff.
It's really hard.
And
it's complex work.
Extraordinarily complex. And there's other things that are issues that may affect child performance that are not exactly academic. And so there's a million variables here, but thank you so much. This is really first-rate work.
I appreciate that. And I just want to say that none of these plans are possible without the school leadership and the teachers who I'm meeting with on a regular basis and really looking at the data and really saying, what do we think is going on? What do we think is going to make things better? And as you said, it's a complex situation. And so it takes a lot of minds and a lot of ideas, and we're going to try a lot of things out.
I'm sorry I was so inarticulate. I didn't say to you that you and the teachers and staff that work on it, because all of you, I know it's a project and you're doing a wonderful job. And the number of teachers you had this summer writing curriculum tells me that we're off in a really good direction.
Yeah.
I feel that way too. Thanks so much.
I also just want to thank you too, Carrie, for your presentation as a whole. I just feel like the way you dissected each step along the way just made it really clear and concise. And so I really want to just say thank you, and I appreciate that. And I too would love for you to come back. I'm of course, because it's really personal for me, but I'm curious to see the improvement now that we have an interventionist in the middle school, which has been lacking for far too long. So I'd be really curious to see how that changes and shifts data in the future.
I appreciate that. And I would be happy to come back and give an update. I feel like a critical time would be after our next round of benchmark assessment.
Agreed.
Sort of in January,
Absolutely.
February.
Yeah.
We've given that intervention some time to work along with a lot of the other things we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And we're giving our second round of STAR tests, and that will help us see some growth along with the curriculum-based assessments, the chip tests that the teachers are giving in the classroom, all of that together.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to come back and share how I think things are going so far.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Awesome. All right. Wow. So moving on. We are now consider for approval the appointment of all members of the Region 12 Board of Education as the Superintendent Search Committee. So we have to the motion. Greg, go for it.
I move that the Board of Education hereby establishes the Superintendent Search Committee to conduct the search for a successor superintendent, and further move that the board name all members of the board to serve as the members of the Superintendent Search Committee.
Second, Mary. Discussion? Are we going to have any discussion at this point? Can we? No. Do you have any questions moving forward? Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Abstain? Done deal. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second? I heard that, Pete. Okay, have a good night, everybody. Thank you.